for your company, but I believe it was the right one. As everyone can see, we also have two empty chairs to demonstrate the failure of Facebook and Apple, companies that somehow find the means to spend millions on lobbying and hire dozens of executives to find the time to be here today. Their failure to appear not only impedes Congress' mission, but also speaks volumes about the company's commitment to transparency and their very own customers. So yes, thank you, Amazon and Google, for being here today, and to Facebook and Apple, you reap what you sow. It is important that everyone in the room understands that this committee has a tradition of being fair and that will continue during this hearing. Earlier this year, we held a hearing on how the digital ecosystem promotes entrepreneurship. And last year, we held an Amazon roundtable on Prime Day. Both events showcase the benefits that tech platforms provide small businesses. Today, we will now look at this through another lens. Yes, it is true that innovation and ingenuity built this country. In fact, one could argue that these qualities are uniquely American and have propelled our nation to produce the most successful companies and the foremost technologies. And I know that the companies we have on this panel and the ones we don't started as an idea in a basement or a college dorm room, and that entrepreneurship, the spirit that built your companies, is to be commended. That being said, the grip that big tech now holds over our daily lives and our competitive landscape at the same time is astounding, but also concerning. Big tech platforms dominate search functions, the devices used by nearly every American, online advertising, and online messaging platforms. They are market leaders in cloud computing services to businesses and consumers, while also providing entertainment and other digital streaming services. Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, and Facebook are collectively worth over $4.3 trillion. Those five companies comprise over 15% of the total value of the S&P 500, which tracks the market value of the 500 largest companies listed on U.S. stock exchanges. To provide a little more context on the scope and reach of these companies, Amazon currently has approximately 50% of the U.S. e-commerce retail market. Nearly 90% of Internet searches go through Google and its subsidiary, YouTube, while Facebook pulled in $55 billion in ad revenue last year. And Apple sold over 217 million iPhones in 2018 alone. The sheer size of these companies, along with pervasive integration of these platforms and concentration of power influencing online traffic, raises questions that should concern anyone who cares about market access, data privacy, small business development, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And one only has to look to the decline in American startups to connect the dots. In 2006, 558,000 businesses were formed, but the census reported that only 414,000 businesses were started in 2015. And there is growing anxiety, not only in the U.S., but around the world, that the large tech companies pose a threat to innovation and competition. When consolidation takes place in any industry and market power is increased, as it has in the tech industry, it is simply too hard for new businesses to get off the ground. Many of the popular products and features of these companies have not been developed internally. They have occurred through merger and acquisition, with the largest being Microsoft paying over $26 billion for LinkedIn. Do we want a country of entrepreneurs and investors that dream of building something or dream of being bought by larger competitors? In my view, we need to reboot the startup economy. And when small businesses do get off the ground and are able to succeed, we need to ensure that they are treated fairly on online marketplaces and that consumers can find them on search engines. Small businesses need certainty and transparency when they are operating their businesses on digital platforms so that they can set competitive prices and still make enough money to continue to grow their businesses, create jobs, and invest in their communities. And when small firms do get into disputes with the powerful gatekeepers, they need a fair shot at resolving the problem so that they can continue to run their businesses. And finally, I think we need to be clear that in a digital marketplace, that every firm, and especially the big tech firms here today, are desperate for our data. Our data is an economic asset, which garners more value as one collects more of it. The concentration of the data in fewer and fewer firms has implications for small businesses. The internet and digital platforms are so deeply woven into American lives that small firms cannot afford to be excluded and or treated unfairly. Small businesses need to be protected by policies that offer them the certainty and transparency they need to make meaningful business decisions. As consumers continue to increase their engagement with businesses through digital platforms, small firms need to be sure that they can be found when new and existing customers are looking for their business. We cannot allow our economy to become one that stifles innovation or make it impossible for small firms to compete. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to create meaningful policies that foster collaboration between small firms and digital platforms and ensure that small businesses have a fair opportunity to succeed. I now like to yield to the ranking member, Mr. Chabot, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for the witnesses that are here today. We understand it's not always easy to answer when Congress calls, but are glad that you've taken the time out of your busy schedules to speak with us today. The digital age has caused a revolution for small businesses. No more are small firms caught behind their larger counterparts when it comes to the availability of game-changing technologies to help grow and expand their businesses. Small firms can now utilize cutting-edge products and services to respond to market changes very swiftly. With the increasing adoption of mobile computing devices, cloud systems and online conference call technology like FaceTime, employees can collaborate effectively, even across great distances, and work almost anywhere. But perhaps the greatest benefit is the financial savings for small businesses. Increases in productivity allow economic expansion of the past 3 years. I think we're all looking forward to our discussion here this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chabot. The gentleman yields back, and if committee members have an opening statement, we will ask that they be submitted for the record. I would like to just take a minute to explain the timing rules. Each witness gets 5 minutes to testify, and members get 5 minutes for questioning. There is a lighting system to assist you. The green light comes on when you begin, and the yellow light means there is 1 minute remaining. The red light comes on when you are out of time, and we ask that you stay within that time frame to the best of your ability. I would now like to introduce our witnesses on today's first panel. I will take a minute to introduce each of you before turning it over for testimony. Our first witness today is Mr. Dharmesh Mehta. Mr. Mehta is the president for Amazon Customer Trust and Support Partner Support Team. The team is focused on creating a trustworthy shopping experience across Amazon stores worldwide by protecting customers, brand selling partners, and Amazon from fraud and abuse, and they are also focused on providing world-class support for Amazon selling partners. He joined Amazon in October 2013, and prior to joining Amazon, Mr. Mehta spent most of his career in the technology industry in a variety of product engineering and marketing leadership roles. Welcome, sir. Our second witness is Ms. Erica Swanson. Ms. Swanson currently serves as the head of community engagement for Grow with Google, which is a new U.S. initiative to help people grow their skills, careers, and businesses through free training, tools, and events. Previously, she served as head of community impact investments and programs at Google Fiber. She led the team responsible for developing and delivering a range of social impact investment and community engagement strategies in Google Fiber cities. A key area of focus was partnering with local leaders to advance digital equity. Our third witness is Dr. Joe Kennedy, a senior fellow at the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, where he focuses on economic policy. For almost 3 decades, he has provided legal and economic advice to senior officials in the public and private sector. Much of this advice has been directed at public policies involving technology, competitiveness, and the social contract. Dr. Kennedy previously served as the chief economist for the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he oversaw a staff of 15 economists and regularly briefed the Secretary of Commerce on economic issues, including the financial crisis and immigration reform. Welcome all. Mr. Mehta, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, and members of the committee. My name is Dharmesh Mehta, and I'm the Vice President of Worldwide Customer Trust and Partner Support at Amazon. Amazon's mission is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. Our philosophy is simple: to work backwards from what customers want, convenience, selection, and low prices, and to constantly innovate to make our store better, for both our buying customers and our selling partners. Amazon lowers barriers to entry for entrepreneurs, we help make retail more vibrantly competitive, and we delight customers with new innovations. In 1999, we decided to open our stores to small and medium businesses, or SMBs, to sell alongside us because we wanted to give customers greater selection that only third-party sellers could provide. And in 2006, we did the same with our logistics network, and we invited SMBs to a new program called Fulfillment by Amazon to give customers even faster delivery. With the partnership of small and medium businesses, we now provide our customers with even more selection with faster delivery speeds. Our store model has worked well because empowering third-party selling has created a better customer experience than Amazon could otherwise provide on its own. Today, in the United States alone, there are more than 1.9 million businesses, content creators, and developers that are using Amazon's products and services to realize their dreams, and they are thriving. On average, they sell more than 4,000 items every minute. In 2018, there were over 25,000 entrepreneurs that surpassed $1 million in sales on Amazon. In addition, these entrepreneurs have used these sales and their businesses to create more than 830,000 jobs for Americans. When third parties first started selling on Amazon, they generated about $100 million in sales and were about 3% of our total sales. Since then, we've made substantial investments to help our selling partners succeed. And now, SMBs generate about $160 billion in sales, and they represent 58% of the total value of physical products sold in our stores. And that's because third-party sellers are thriving and growing at almost twice as fast as Amazon's own retail business. And we celebrate that growth, and we expect that trend to continue. But numbers paint only part of the picture. Every American small business has a story that tells much, much more. And so I'd like to share one with the committee. Let me tell you about Tara Darnley from Greensboro, North Carolina. She owns Darling & Company. Tara and her husband, Carl, had an idea for a new product to help their baby get through teething. At the time, Tara didn't have a business background, she didn't have a college degree, and her husband was working as a pastry chef. So they started to prototype devices, and a few prototypes later, Darling & Company was in business with the Yummy Mitt. Their innovative teether became a big hit at trade shows, and a few months later, the Yummy Mitt was on retail shelves. However, Tara says that listing the product on Amazon was the real game changer. Tara not only sold on Amazon, but she relied on Amazon customer reviews and sales data to grow her business. She said that she had initially focused on marketing to moms, but as she looked at the Amazon data, she realized that grandparents were an untapped target. And Tara says that when their sales really jumped when they started marketing to grandparents. Darling & Company is now a global company. They sell 20 different baby products. Carl has quit his day job, and he now works with Tara every day, and they have 10 employees running the business. There are thousands of stories just like this that I'd love to tell you if we have the time. We know that our selling partners have many ways to reach our customers, and so our value proposition has to remain strong. That's the reason that this year we'll invest over $15 billion in infrastructure, in tools, in programs, and employees that create programs to help our selling partners' success. We have 7,000 employees building tools and features that help our selling partners run their business, to set up their accounts, to list products, to manage their inventory, and to grow their business. We have another 10,000 full-time employees that are dedicated to understanding, responding to, and providing support to our selling partners. And our goal is to respond to and resolve every one of those contacts expeditiously. Last year, more than 80% of those selling partner issues were fully resolved in less than 24 hours. We also have 5,000 employees working to prevent fraud and abuse in our stores. Our efforts to proactively stop fraud and abuse are critical to creating a trusted shopping experience, not only for our customers, but also for our honest selling partners. We're also proud of the work we've done to help our selling partners build thriving businesses beyond selling on Amazon. That includes hundreds of thousands of authors who have published millions of books through Kindle Direct Publishing, hundreds of thousands of SMBs and startups using Amazon Web Services, and hundreds of thousands of third-party developers who've built more than 100,000 skills for Alexa. These opportunities enable a wide variety of entrepreneurs to sell their products, fuel their creative passion, grow their business, and create jobs. I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson, you're now recognized.
Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I appreciate your leadership in making sure small businesses have every opportunity to grow and thrive, and I look forward to sharing with you the many ways that Google is committed to supporting that goal. My name is Erica Swanson, and I am the head of community engagement for Grow with Google, which is Google's initiative to create economic opportunity for all Americans. At Google, we are deeply proud of the ways in which we support the success of the small business community in the United States and globally. And we believe large companies like Google should play a role in helping them succeed. Today, I will discuss Google's positive economic impact on American businesses, the products and tools we provide small businesses to help them succeed, and Grow with Google's free trainings and programs for American small business owners and employees. Google tools help American businesses find and connect with customers. In 2018, Google's search and advertising tools helped provide $335 billion of economic activity nationwide. Over 1.3 million U.S. businesses, website publishers, and nonprofits use our tools annually to grow their customer base and drive revenue. Two examples of small businesses that use our products and services to grow their business and reach new customers are Propel Electric Bikes in Brooklyn, New York, and Nehemiah Manufacturing Company in Cincinnati, Ohio. I go into more detail in my written testimony about how these inspiring businesses are using our products to succeed. There are a number of ways our products and tools help small businesses meet their online goals. Businesses are discoverable not only in organic search, that's the standard non-advertising search results, but also through free business profiles on Google, where businesses can list their websites, add photos, update their hours, and more. In addition to free services, we have a robust suite of advertising products that help small businesses reach the right customer at the right time. For every $1 invested in Google Ads, our estimates suggest that businesses make an average of $2 back in revenue. With Google Analytics on a business website, the owner can better understand their customers to make online marketing efforts even more effective. And Google's suite of workplace productivity tools called G Suite helps small businesses work more efficiently. Google also plays a part in helping small businesses reach new customers who are outside the U.S. Small business exports contribute significantly to the U.S. economy. Market Finder is Google's free tool that enables any small business to identify the best expansion markets for their business, find shipping and logistic partners, adapt to local markets, and start exporting to customers around the world. We understand that the magnitude of tools and resources available can be daunting. That's why we launched Google for Small Business, a dedicated online tool that curates our resources into a personalized digital marketing plan. We also help small businesses learn how to use our products and tools. Through our Grow with Google program, we are seeking to ensure that more Americans seize the opportunity that is created by technology. Since 2017, Grow with Google has trained more than 3 million Americans in all 50 states. We do this through our free online tools, partnerships with local organizations, delivering in-person trainings, and providing philanthropy to organizations that are helping small businesses learn skills. We also know how important it is to support small businesses that are just getting started. So last month, as part of our $1 billion global commitment to create more economic opportunity for everyone, Google.org announced a $10 million U.S. commitment to help low-income, underrepresented entrepreneurs start their businesses by providing access to training, mentoring, and much-needed capital. Our Grow with Google programs continue to evolve to meet the needs of our users. For example, just last week, we partnered with the Small Business Administration to support National Veterans Small Business Week. We also launched a series of new resources that support the 2.5 million veteran-led businesses in the United States. In conclusion, the future of small businesses online is bright, and we are proud of the role we play. We appreciate the opportunity to highlight Google's contributions to helping the small business community, and we thank you. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Shabbat, and members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here to talk about the impact that large internet companies are having on small business. I'd like to make 5 basic points in my opening statement. The first is that large internet platforms deliver tremendous benefits to small business. Any business now can set up a free website, but it can also set up social networking accounts for free using Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Amazon. Not only that, it can also use market platforms like eBay and Amazon to sell worldwide to potential customers. These platforms often offer a variety of other services, such as handling the payments, shipping, handling returns, thus saving the small business from having to do that itself. Gig platforms match small business men and women with potential customers that are interested in their services, thus allowing them to build a clientele without spending more money on print advertising, radio, or mail inserts. And finally, a separate set of platforms, including Microsoft and Google, offer cloud services on demand for small businesses. My second point is that these platforms share a common interest with the small businesses that use them, and that is to offer a larger variety of good products and services, which will attract more consumers, which will result in more sales. Platforms that don't do this successfully will lose market share. My third point is that this fundamental model isn't new. We also have large retail chains, including Costco, Safeway, CVS, and Walmart, which offer shelf space to thousands of suppliers. These retail shops collect a lot of data on what's selling, and occasionally they make the decision to offer a competing product. That product then sits on the same shelf often with those of its other suppliers, and is sometimes offered at a discount. Wherever this happens, consumers benefit. They get a broader choice and they get lower prices, and this is exactly the type of competition that we should be encouraging. My fourth point is that globalization and technology have changed the optimum size of firms in many industries. Small firms feel pressure to grow in order to take advantage of a global market. But platforms relieve some of this pressure because they stand ready to take some of their fixed costs and turn them into variable costs that can scale up or down with business conditions. And so these include some of the ones I've mentioned: shipping, returns, cloud-based, setting up cloud services. And then my final point is that antitrust policy should encourage competition, but it should not protect companies, whether they're large or small, from the effects of that competition. The fundamental guidepost for antitrust should remain the Consumer Welfare Standard, which looks at whether a particular merger or a business activity will harm consumers by raising price, lowering quality, or delaying innovation. Where these occur, existing policy and law allows regulators and potential plaintiffs to take action to rectify the situation. But we should not use antitrust policy to try and accomplish other goals, such as instilling privacy requirements or trying to rebalance the political power between large or small companies. With that, I'll conclude my statement, and I want to thank you again for this opportunity to talk to you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, and thank you all for your testimonies. I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. I would like to address my first question to you, Mr. Mehta. Some argue that Amazon doesn't just dominate the online market, it controls its access by creating a platform for sellers while also competing against those same businesses. Doesn't a company that sells things and owns the platform where things are sold have an inherent advantage over other small businesses that is competing against?
Thank you, Chairwoman, first for holding this hearing and allowing Amazon to participate in this conversation. I'm honored to be here. Let me address your question by comparing ourselves to what happens traditionally in the retail market. And when we talk about retail, we talk about the overall retail market. Amazon represents about 1% of the worldwide retail market and about 4% of the U.S. retail market. And whether you look at Walmart or Target or Trader Joe's or Costco, all of these major retailers have a private label business that competes with others in their store. For Amazon, our private label business represents about 1% of our total sales. If you look at most of these retailers, their private label businesses represent anywhere from 18 to 85% of their total sales.
I hear you. However, there are some research that shows that Amazon's own product consistently win the buy box. And we know what is winning the buy box, the area on the right-hand side of the page that says add to cart. So this to me suggests that the buy box is designed to favor Amazon and potentially gives you an unfair advantage. But I have a lot of questions, so let me proceed. Ms. Swanson, like Amazon, Google has market dominance in that 90% of all internet searches go through Google. Small businesses cannot survive on the internet if they cannot be found. However, when Amazon, Walmart, Verizon, Expedia, and many more large companies spend millions advertising on Google, and their ads appear on the first page, doesn't this crowd out the ability for small firms to advertise online?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for having us here and for the opportunity to have this conversation. There are a number of ways that small businesses can be discovered online, and at Google, we are proud to provide a range of options, both paid and unpaid. We have a suite of tools that are free at no cost to small businesses.
And so if you Google a restaurant that doesn't pay but is using your free space, that restaurant probably will show up on page 5 or 7. And so that clearly gives an advantage for those who pay, and that will show up in the first page.
There are a number of ways that small businesses like this small restaurant could appear depending on the particular search query, whether that search query included the restaurant's name. But typically, if it includes a restaurant name or a qualifier like near me, it will appear in the first set of organic search listings.
How can entrepreneurs optimize their search results? Does Google Maps only identify restaurants and hotels on its mapping platform for those businesses that are willing to pay to be found?
No, Madam Chairwoman, we have a number of ways that small businesses can appear on Google Search and Maps. Many of those are free. So, for example, Grow with Google helps small businesses claim their free Google My Business listing. This allows a small business to share their website, or if they don't have one, create a website so that they show up in that local search on that map. They can share their hours, they can share customer reviews, encourage that conversation with customers that's so important to building customer loyalty over time.
Mr. Mehta, small businesses just want to be treated fairly and understand Amazon's terms of use regarding pricing, fees, and other arrangements. Is it true that for some businesses, 30 through 40% of their sales price goes back to Amazon?
Chairwoman, the way our fees work for professional sellers on Amazon, they pay $40 a month here in the U.S., and then on top of that, they will pay a fee that depends on the product they sell, typically 8 to 15%. Any additional fees are up to the seller based on additional services they choose to use, such as our fulfillment services or advertising services.
Do you have a number as to the percentage that they pay back to Amazon compared to the profits that they're making?
Madam Chairwoman, I do not have that data point in front of me. I'd be happy to have the team follow up.
Does Amazon give sellers adequate notice and transparency of changes to fees or other terms of their seller agreement?
Our fees are publicly posted. They're both available to all sellers before they start selling, as well as anyone in the public can see those fees. And we try to provide transparent advance notice before changing those fees.
You try to provide, but do you in advance?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't own our fees. I'm happy to have someone follow up with the specifics of what's been done in every instance.
Okay.
But we want our sellers to be able to plan for our fees, and we try to make those fees very attractive. You know, for instance, if I look at our Fulfillment by Amazon fees that provide fulfillment services for sellers, we benchmark those versus alternatives that the sellers have. And our fees on average are 50 to 80% lower than sellers' alternatives.
Well, what I'm asking you in the name of transparency and certainty for the small businesses is you provide notices in advance, giving them enough time. What about sellers that use Amazon warehouses? Do they have opportunities to reconcile if there is a dispute with Amazon and prevent their inventory from being seized?
Absolutely. So when sellers send their inventory into our fulfillment centers, if they choose to use Fulfilled by Amazon, they have visibility into their inventory, that inventory that's available for sale when it's purchased. And if for any reason there's a dispute, we have 10,000 associates that support sellers every day and respond to them quickly.
Does Amazon consider how long a seller has been using the platform before closing or suspending an account?
When we close or suspend accounts, they can be done for a variety of reasons. If an account is suspended for potential fraud or abuse or other policy violations, we make decisions around closing accounts based on the activities that have happened and the potential policy violations.
Thank you. Now I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mehta, in March, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with Amazon, published a report detailing the impact of technology on rural communities. The report acknowledges that rural business owners who have already embraced digital technology are seeing tremendous results. What's been your experience in seeing the potential of e-commerce for growth by small businesses in rural America?
Thank you, Ranking Member Shabbat, for the question. It's a great question. You know, one of the powerful things that enabling sellers to sell in Amazon store has achieved is for these businesses that are often in rural America that have historically set up physical shops, they've only been able to reach customers within a small distance of their physical store. By selling on Amazon, we enable them to not only sell in their local district, but to sell across their state, to sell across the country, and increasingly to sell across the world. You know, as one example, a feature we launched recently called Fba Export is a program for sellers that use our fulfillment services to export products to other parts of the world. It helps sellers find customers in other parts of the world, it helps navigate export requirements, and that just one program generated $1.8 billion in sales for American businesses.
Thank you very much. Ms. Swanson, I'll go to you next. It's my understanding that about 96% of the people that occupy this globe are outside the borders of the United States. So there's a huge market out there for large and small businesses. And I've got a book here, Growing Small Business Exports by Google. And could you tell us, obviously we don't have time to go through all this, but what is Google able to do to allow America's small businesses to more successfully market their products across the globe?
Thank you, Ranking Member Shabbat. Being able to increase broader markets is increasingly important to small businesses. My family had a small business, a bakery in a small town, and their market was their town. And today a small business like that can reach and sell across the nation and across the globe. This is important to our economy and to job creation in the United States. One recent study shows that 6 million jobs in the United States are supported by small businesses who are exporting. Google is proud to make it easier for small businesses to export their goods and to find new markets. Examples are Strider Sports in South Dakota. They had this great little idea to build bikes that little kids could push without needing pedals so they could move without falling over. They had this great idea, and now thanks to digital tools and the expanded market that the web enables, they've sold 2.5 million bikes in 78 countries, and the majority of their sales are coming from international exports. This is really enabled because the web has enabled small businesses to reach into these global markets to find new places to reach new customers.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, or Dr. Kennedy, I'm sorry. Some have suggested recently that we need a new regulatory regime to clamp down on tech companies, and that the government ought to be determining, you know, what you do and how you do it, et cetera, to a much greater degree than is existent today. Obviously, these are private companies, but we also, you know, want them to be fair, you know, with the public and that sort of thing. What is your view relative to additional regulations coming out of Washington? The mic.
Thank you. I tend to be very skeptical of that. I think that the government's primary purpose should be to try and ensure a competitive market and to try and make sure that there's active competition that results in good products at low prices going to consumers. It should be reluctant to take a side in the various battles that occur between businesses over different practices or getting market share. The one exception is where is either a merger that could result in monopoly power, or where there are clear uncompetitive practices. And there, I think the existing antitrust laws already give regulators and potential plaintiffs the powers that they need to restore competition. I do think it's worth having a dialogue about fair business practices in general, and transparency and consistency, but I'm very reluctant to have the government mandate those. I think it's likely to be more productive if decisions are arrived at by an open conversation.
Okay. Thank you very much. My
Thank
time's
you.
expired, Madam Chair.
If you have any other questions, you're the chair recognizes Ms. Davids from Kansas.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and Ranking Member Shabbat for holding this hearing today. And I think this is a really important conversation as it relates to our country's small businesses. Finding a fair marketplace and competing with big businesses has always been a challenge for small businesses. And using and competing with large tech companies, however, is a new iteration on that issue. So it's vital that we ensure that online marketplaces provide a fair online space for businesses to compete. And I actually am going to follow up on the ranking member's line of questioning, because that's where I was headed anyway. Dr. Kennedy, I noticed in your testimony, and you actually started getting to it based on Ranking Member Shabbat's questioning, is can you talk to us a little bit about enhancing the rules governing fairness and transparency as it relates to how small businesses can interact with these large platforms that in some instances they're both a customer and a competitor of the large platforms?
Yeah, I can't. I don't feel I can get into a lot of detail, but I used to be general counsel of the Senate subcommittee on investigations, and there we found that when we saw a problem in a particular market, often if we called people in and we had a quiet discussion with them about why they did a certain thing, and we could get a sensible resolution, and they would go off and amend their practice. And I think that kind of informal dialogue can accomplish a lot. I think as far as specific things, in general, I think it's reasonable for a businessman to know what the rules are for a platform and to have them applied with some consistency. And as a general matter, I'd look at Costco or Walmart, and I'd look and see how are they treating their suppliers, and we don't seem to have a lot of problems with them. So, if they have a particular practice, if Amazon and Google has a similar practice, I don't think necessarily we should have a problem with them either. I do note, I forget the gentleman's name, but one of the people on the next panel has in his filed testimony a pretty good discussion of some of the issues and possible resolutions. So I think they're out there.
In your testimony, you talk about an example of the United Kingdom's open banking initiative and the EU's payment services directive. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I don't know
why you use them as an example.
I don't know the great details in them, but in general, they allow. My understanding is that they allow a banking customer to mandate that his or her information be available to various outside apps, so that if you want to download an app that will download information from your, say, banking account and compare your fees to the fees of other banks and tell you how you could save on fees by moving to a different bank or
So you think those kinds of policies might be helpful when we're talking about large internet platforms that are selling goods and services, and having a very transparent process of understanding what your fees are versus if you were on if you were paying for Google to put you in a search versus another searching platform. I'm actually not sure what other platforms folks use besides Google, which kind of brings us to the point of how dependent small businesses might be on one or two specific platforms. Do you think that that's something that we need to see more of in these instances?
I think in general it is good to have a conversation with between Congress and the industries. It often is better to have it in private where people can don't feel under the gun that they have to get every word exactly right, and I think that often that results in reasonable changes to business practices. The platforms already have a strong interest.
My time is running out. I think the folks in my district might be a little surprised to hear you say that we should have meetings behind closed doors with large businesses. But I thank you for your time and thank you for your testimony today. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, and the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn, ranking member of the subcommittee on economic growth, tax, and capital access, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As you all know, every big business begins as a small business, and as an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a job creator of thousands of jobs over 34 years, I appreciate the support that you've given the small business job creators of the world. I was just looking, I have 5 businesses that I created that my family members now run today, thanks being in Congress, that use both of your services, either Google Suites or the AWS S3 server system and cloud-based other tools that you have. So I really appreciate it. And for Amazon, this support is represented by $500 million of AWS credits that you gave out in 2018. This has led to hundreds of thousands of small businesses, startups using your web services to launch and scale their businesses, including over 1 million current small businesses utilizing their web services, 6,500 of which are in my home state of Oklahoma. As for Google, the support for small businesses is represented by the fact that in 2018, your search and advertising tools helped to provide $335 billion of economic activity nationwide, $712 million of economic activity in Oklahoma, and $1.69 million of free advertising in the Oklahoma nonprofits. Benefits for over 7,800 Oklahoma businesses, website publishers, and nonprofits, and we thank you for that. Both of you all are very well represented in our Northeast Oklahoma area. The Google Data Center complex is just outside of my district, which is I've had the opportunity to tour, which I'll go on the record for say it's very large. The Amazon Fulfillment Center coming to Tulsa in 2020 is the largest ever job employer ever in the history of Northeast Oklahoma, where we're at. So I really appreciate that. So with all of this, I would say that what you do also for the help and start small businesses start up and help with the protecting of small business from cyber threats, I would like for you, just taking my remaining amount of time here, so hopefully a minute and a half each, that each of you could talk about how beneficial these startup services are and the ability to continue on with your marketplace. We'll start with Amazon, your marketplace, and the cyber threats as we're seeing them today, how you can help secure those fronts for small business and entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Congressman. Absolutely. One of the things that we find to be very powerful for these small businesses is the way that we can level the playing field, that we can provide access to not only the reach of hundreds of millions of customers, not only the large fulfillment centers and fulfillment capability we've built, but also the advanced fraud and abuse detection capabilities that protect these small and medium businesses, that end up lowering costs for them and to continue to allow them to thrive. And we think it's some of the key ingredients that have continued to allow small businesses to grow so fast and become now 58% of our total sales.
Thank you. Ms. Swanson. Dr. Swanson. Ms. Swanson. I'm sorry.
Still Ms. Thank you, Congressman Hearn. Google is really proud to call Oklahoma home, and pleased to hear that we have customers in your family. Cloud computing is one of the ways that we help small businesses take their security very seriously. Cloud computing can give small businesses an advantage that wasn't available many years ago. It can help them access their data from anywhere, anytime, at a reasonable price. And security and that safety is really built in. What we hear as we travel the country working with small businesses is that they're really good at what they do. They know their business. What they might not know as much about is the digital tools, things like how to keep their data safe. And so they turn to affordable products like cloud computing to keep their data safe.
I appreciate both of your comments. The only thing I'd like to say in my remaining moments is I think sometimes people forget that every large business did start as a small business. And I think we oftentimes forget that in the case of both of your companies, for sure, and obviously Mr. Zuckerberg, who's not here, your companies were started by the people who are currently involved in your companies. And we just ask, I think collectively as a bipartisan committee, that they not forget where they came from. Whether it be Mr. Brand and Mr. Page in their dorm room at Stanford, or whether it be Mr. Bezos, who I'd like to go on the record to say his first job was at McDonald's at 16 years old, sort of near and dear to my heart, and learned a lot from that lesson, that they wouldn't forget and continue to help entrepreneurs create this competitive environment and the free market ideas that got them the ability to start and allowed them to get to where they're at today, that they would not forget that. And if that's a message that we could get collectively bipartisan out of this committee back to them and many of the other companies that have come from absolutely nothing, we'd like to make that message heard loud and clear. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and now we recognize Mr. Evans from Pennsylvania, Vice Chair of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank you for the leadership on this discussion, because I like to start out with just the title. Basically, the title is A Fair Playing Field, Investing Big Tech Impact on Small Business. So I'd like to start out with, I think that's his name, Mr. Kennedy. Is that you?
Yes.
You were kind of given a general sense of what certain things you didn't think should happen in terms of what government should do. And fair. So you see that question, and it's a very simple question. So kind of give me your reaction to that question, that we are just attempting to do our oversight responsibility. You know, we know the importance of small business in this nation and the role that it plays. I come from the city of Philadelphia. We have like 25% poverty. I like to see more growth and more opportunity. So can you talk a little bit about relating to what you see as the fair playing field? Because what I heard you mention as a solution was kind of using the soft stick of conversation. So talk a little bit to me about how you view the fair playing field.
Yeah, so I think the government should work hard to make sure that it's as easy to start a business as possible, that it's as easy to get credit and consulting help as possible. That when a business does get created, that the markets it is in are competitive and give it a fair shot. That the rules of the market, the laws are fairly applied. But it shouldn't try and favor one set of businesses over the other, whether they're small businesses versus big business or platforms versus sellers. It should allow that competition to go on, and that competition inevitably results in losers who complain. But unless there's demonstrated unfairness in the rules of the market, in which case antitrust already has the powers to deal with it, the government, should leave well enough alone.
Well, if you were whipping out your report card at this point, and you look at where we are, and obviously this is new to all of us. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're just fully trying to understand it. But, we hear a lot of complaints about individuals not being able to get into the marketplace. As you say, government should just leave it like it is, then how are you rating it at this point?
Well, I think the companies testifying today and the other ones we've mentioned, they already have a significant interest in expanding the number of small businesses that use and big businesses that use their platform, and of working with those businesses to grow to grow their volume. So that incentive already exists. Now there's a fight at the margin about this rule or that rule or how it's applied, and I think government usually doesn't is better off not getting too involved in setting those rules, but should concentrate on, is the competition on the whole fair?
But would you agree, you may not, would you agree that it is critical that small businesses are given an equal opportunity to enter the marketplace and flourish?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's why I was kind of trying to drill down on the question and, what's your view of the way, because obviously, maybe some cases it may not be working.
Yeah, and I think the central question antitrust officials ought to ask is what's going on hurting the customer? So if competition is putting some companies out of business, but prices are going down, efficiency is going up, consumers are benefiting, then that's okay. If consumers are getting hurt because companies are getting monopoly power and they're raising prices, then that's not okay, and we have antitrust policies. But we ought to look at how is the consumer being helped or hurt.
Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time, Madam
Gentleman
Chairperson.
yields back. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Hagedorn, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Chabot. Appreciate the witnesses. And I represent a rural part of southern Minnesota there, and so obviously for small businesses and entrepreneurs wanting to get their start, the platforms that you provide can make a huge difference. They have in many instances. So, especially from a rural standpoint, I get it, and I think, as my colleague Congressman Hearn said, in many ways this is a really good thing. But I did talk with someone in my office recently, Mr. Maith, about a product that a woman named Sophia had on your platform. She's selling espresso machines, had about 100,000 put into the business. Very happy because doing it through you, she can work from home and all sorts of you'd say luxuries for a business owner to be able to do those types of things. But she said there were certain costs, 15% on average goes to your company to sell their machines. There could be storage costs if you have machines at the warehouses and things like that, and also some advertising. So in general, do you think the way that you're charging these small businesses is fair? Are there ways to look at that to make sure that they're not being gouged? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, Congressman, thank you for the question. Fundamentally, the way we view this is that we succeed when sellers succeed. Our growth over the years, a large part of it is because of the success of these small and medium businesses. And so we want to make sure we offer a set of services at a set of fees and prices that are super attractive and reasonable. Now, advertising as one of those can be very powerful for that rural business that has an unknown brand that no one may know about, that maybe has invented an amazing espresso maker. We want them to be able to advertise their products, but advertising is a choice. And for the brand that is known and is generating the sales or the awareness that they want, they don't need to buy advertising. And so we try and make as many of these a choice, a simple choice with easy-to-use tools so that different small and medium businesses can pick the set of services that work best for them.
Yeah, I think that's a very good answer. It makes sense. You want your clients to be successful, and then from a consumer standpoint, it's awesome for us to be able to go there and wherever it is and find all these different choices and shop and things of that nature. So then I would move on to the other aspect of this, which is kind of the infrastructure of how we search for companies that can provide services and products. So I'd go to Ms. Swanson. How do we know for sure that your company isn't picking winners and losers in the marketplace, that you're not really fronting for companies that may advertise more, or just in general, how can we be assured that that's not happening? Because you're the infrastructure. You're like the road. And if you just decide that only certain cars and trucks get to go out first or get to drive faster and everybody else is left behind, that wouldn't be fair. So in this case, with the Internet, how would you respond to that?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. At Google Search, we design for everyone. The business model of search is dependent on being useful and being trustworthy for our users. So we have a natural long-term incentive to prevent to prevent that type of activity on our platforms. We build those platforms and those products in a really neutral way, and we work hard to make sure that we're continuing to improve search to surface the most reliable, most relevant answers for our search users in real time.
Well, who audits you to determine whether or not that's happening? Because you don't know what you don't see, right? So if I put in a search for widgets, but some company, it doesn't come up, how would I ever know that? So who would kind of look over your shoulder to make sure that that's being done properly?
Yeah. We have a series of processes and safeguards in place that allow us to continue to test and then evolve and improve the way that search functions. Some of the ways we do that, for example, are running hundreds of thousands of experiments every year and asking independent search users to review the quality of those search improvements, always looking to understand, are we providing the most relevant, reliable answers to our search users? We take that feedback into account. We take it very seriously.
Yeah, I'm not always for too much regulation in the marketplace, things like that. I think we should make sure that in the future there's at least somebody who's overseeing this or looking at the results to make sure that if it's not happening, then we have to make some changes, because I think you would want to be the first ones to make changes so the government wouldn't move in and regulate in these areas. But it's pretty important, I think, for businesses and the consumers that be done on a fair basis. So thank you.
The gentleman yields back, and the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden, Chairman of the Subcommittee on Contracting and Infrastructure. Recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mehta, I wanted to ask, does Amazon use algorithms that favor sellers over who use fulfillment by Amazon over those who choose to do fulfillment by merchant?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. The short answer is no. We design our algorithms for search and the products we feature based on what we think customers want, regardless of whether those products are sold by Amazon.
Just to be clear, not products, but sellers.
We don't design them to favor sellers or products based on who's selling them or the fulfillment channel. We design them to prioritize what we think customers want most.
All right. I guess we've heard from some people back home in Maine who are concerned that may not be the case, and perhaps you have a better explanation. But has Amazon ever been willing to maybe do some third-party testing or something on its algorithms, which of course would be done to avoid revealing how the precise mechanisms work, but could confirm for sellers that there is in fact no bias towards people who use one or the other?
Yeah, so I'd have to have someone from our search team follow up, but I do know we run constant experiments looking at our search results to make sure we're prioritizing what customers want most, and that we're avoiding any type of unintentional bias in that system, and we'd have to have that team follow up with you.
I would appreciate that very much, and obviously that would be important to avoid that kind of unfair bias. And we have a company in Maine that sells products to help keep houses from losing heat in the wintertime. They choose to ship their own orders and believe that they've noticed that their product has started missing out on search placement and sales to competitors who use FBA. They believe their experience is backed up by testimony from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance at a July House Antitrust Subcommittee hearing, and a letter to Congress from another seller described in a November 8th Bloomberg article. Another concern that we have that impacts sellers' ability to choose whether or not they want to use FBA instead of going with their own option is that sometimes Amazon may suspend sellers' accounts if they deliver items late. I understand you're trying to look out for consumers, but I also understand that you may exempt sellers who use FBA from similar penalties. I'm just curious, is there a penalty to Amazon itself under FBA for late delivery that would either recompensate the seller or the consumer, similar to the way of people who do fulfillment by merchant?
Thank you, Congressman. If an order is delivered late by our fulfillment services, Amazon takes responsibility for that order, makes sure the customer is made whole, and we do not hold sellers liable for that. So we do take accountability for those.
All right, good. It just seems like a common, you're going to hold yourself to the standard you would hold other, some of your clients to, would be important. I appreciate that. If I could shift over to Ms. Swanson. I think we're going to hear some testimony from the second panel. I do have some concerns. I'm just curious in learning more about it, having to do with some of Google's Blue Book room button changes, and also some potential changes recently this year having to do with how people are able to find businesses' phone numbers. And I think one of the, you probably heard many questions about the blue button, in a system where essentially people are often booking, whether they know it or not, through OTAs. You may have a consumer seeking to purchase a room directly from a hotel or a bed and breakfast or something, and largely unaware that they are booking through an OTA when they use the Blue Book button. I'm curious if you have any feedback about that change. Have you considered whether or not you can build in the ability for consumers to choose to go directly to a business? And secondly, I've heard that there's been changes this year where a lot of searches no longer have phone numbers for businesses directly listed unless they opt to pay for that listing, essentially paying to have their own phone number advertised. And of course, as a consumer, very frustrating to think you've booked directly with someone, then try and pick up the phone and call them and realize you can't.
Thank you, Congressman, for your question. There are a number of ways that a user might go about finding a service provider. For example, a hotel could be to direct navigate to that website, could be to search for it, could discover it in organic search, or could choose to book through an OTA. You ask about some of those panels that we have on the right side of search. We do work to make it very transparent to the user when they have the option of booking through the official site. There's a little button there that says the official site, for example, of that hotel. Although some users may choose to book through an OTA for their own personal kind of shopping preferences, and that's a choice that we want to provide. You also ask a little bit about how small businesses can make their phone number available. We know that's really important. Be able to provide that direct connection from search to a small business can be a critical way of initiating contact with that potential customer. And through our local services, features, and products, we can help small businesses list their phone numbers for free in their Google My Business listing. Direct that call directly to that small business.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm overdue on time, but I would just ask that you commit yourself to that transparency for consumers, particularly as you need to change your interface for things like this, smaller screens. Suddenly that transparency becomes much more difficult for consumers.
The gentleman yields back, and the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Balderson, ranking member of the Subcommittee on Innovation and Workforce Development, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to do a couple questions and kind of follow some of Mr. Hearn's lead, and I'll probably try to work with you all some more. But it's good for us to find out, the technology side of the companies and American small businesses, and I'm going to share more a success side of it. But Mr. Matton and Ms. Swanson, sorry, bad angle here. I first want to thank you both and your companies to date. In the district and in the state of Ohio. Amazon has invested $5 billion. In Google, you have invested closer to $7 billion. So thank you both very much. And I want to share a story. I did the groundbreaking ceremony for Google a couple of weeks ago. And I was pulling in the facility, and I was driving, and I look off to the side, and I see one of my buddies, he's got waste dumpsters there. There was 9 of them I counted, so I got excited for him. I thought, wow, Google's actually working with small businesses here in the district and the communities. And I thought how important that was. So I call Seth up, and I say, hey, Seth, congratulations, man. I'm looking at your dumpsters here, and I see 9 of them out here. And he said, 9? He said, there better be 14. I said, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But anyway, just thank you, because that's meaningful to small business owners in those districts when you build these huge data centers. So thank you very much. Would each of you please explain to this committee what the growth of the internet and the information age has meant for small businesses? Ms. Swanson, ladies first.
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. And And thank you for the kind words about our data centers. What you saw is part of a $13 billion investment that Google is making across America to create new data centers and expand our offices. And we're committed to working with small businesses in these communities as part of that work. We really see the internet and Google products and tools as being great equalizers, as being tools that help small businesses do things, reach customers, and become discoverable in ways that used to be only available to the very biggest of businesses. It used to be that if you were a small business and you wanted to market to customers, you had few options. They were TV, they were radio, maybe outdoor, out of home in some way. And now if you're a small business, you can set your budget, and with very limited budget even, make really effective, focused online media advertising campaigns. And we hear that's a game changer. As we travel the country, we hear from small businesses again and again that this is helping them find the right customer at the right time in ways that they could not have imagined before.
Okay, thank you. I want to jump to another question because from the time limit that we're on here, and because I do want to talk about the positive things that are created from big techs and from small businesses. I'd like to highlight a recent meeting I had with a constituent in my district who actually, I wouldn't say went out of business, but pretty much just shut down his business that he had prior to that. In doing so, then he changed and started up another business, a vintage bookseller business, and he used Amazon's tools, including the fulfillment by Amazon, and his business just in the last year has grown 500%. He's had to expand his workforce, and he now ships to customers across the U.S. and Canada. Would you, both of you, and Mr. May, you can go first on this one, would you, each of you please tell this committee how many businesses, publishers, or nonprofits benefit from your services that you're aware of?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman, for the question. And that story of Vintage Book Art Company is another awesome story of many entrepreneurs and small businesses across America. You know, currently there's more than 1.9 million small businesses, content creators, authors, et cetera, that are small and medium businesses across the U.S. that are partnering with Amazon and growing as a result. And interestingly, these small businesses have generated more than 830,000 new jobs for Americans. And so we're very excited both about that specific business, but in general about what we've been able to do together with partnership with small businesses.
Thank you both very much for your investment in Ohio. And Madam Chair, I yield back my remaining time.
The gentleman is back, and now the gentleman from New York, Mr. Espaillat, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question goes to Mr. Mehta. I want to touch base on the Amazon storefronts. Small businesses, approximately 30,000 small and medium-sized businesses you mentioned in your prepared statement participate in Amazon storefront. My question is, what is Amazon's practice for outreach, and do you know the demographic or geographic breakdown of participating small and medium-sized businesses?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. You know, Amazon storefronts is very exciting. We have 30,000 small businesses that are already participating. They've reached 70 million customers and sold over 250 million items. We have a number of different ways we try and outreach to these small, medium businesses. It starts with a great deal of online content and help. Programs like our Seller University that provide courses and training and videos and webinars to help these small, medium businesses. And just recently, we announced a new Amazon Small Business Academy where we send Amazon employees into local communities to sit side by side with small businesses as they get started on Amazon and help them as they start selling. So very excited about storefronts and very excited about Small Business Academy. When an Amazon search for a product yields a result, are these products shown contemporaneously with relevant products, or how does that work? So when a customer places a search result on Amazon, yes. We use the query that they typed in to try and find what we think will be the best products, regardless of who's selling it or how they're selling it, but what we think the customer is most likely to want, and we put those in front of the customer.
And do the results delineate Amazon storefront and those that are not? Is this the same for English language searches versus Spanish searches or other non-English languages? How is that handled if I was to search in Spanish, for example?
Yeah, so customers speak many different languages, and we try and support them in their native language. And so when we design our search results, we do think about who the customer is and where they're searching, and customize the search results accordingly.
Okay. My next question is regarding what is your reimbursement schedule or model for products sold through or on Amazon for small businesses? Is it uniform, or can the vendor work to adjust or meet the needs of the industry? Let's say, for example, seasonal or employee design. Small businesses obviously have very strong constraints very often. How do you handle your reimbursement schedule?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. On average, our selling partners are paid 7 days after a customer receives the product. And so we like to make that very quick as soon as after the customer receives the product.
Thank you so much. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. And let me take this opportunity to thank all the witnesses for taking time to be here and answer our questions. You are now excused, and we will take a moment while we get our next panel up. Thank you.
You can have both. I'm Theo. Used to these microphones in.
Okay, so we're going to resume. Yeah. I will ask everyone to please take your seat. Thank you. Welcome to our witnesses on today's second panel. I will take a minute to introduce each of you before turning it over for your testimony. Our first witness today is Ms. Alison Cabarrera. Ms. Cabarrera is an executive leader and part owner of the family-run Meadowmere Resort on Maine's southern coast. She is a third-generation small business owner and graduate of the University of Notre Dame, Mendoza College of Business, cum laude. Ms. Cabarrera has received the Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence, the Innovation Award from the Institute for Family-Owned Business, and formal bipartisan recognition from the Maine State Legislature. Welcome. Our second witness is Mr. Molson Hart, the CEO and founder of Buy a Heart Toy Company, a retail toy company based in Houston, Texas. Buy a Heart has 4 full-time employees and sold about $4 million of product on Amazon last year. Mr. Hart speaks Chinese and specializes in manufacturing, logistics, and e-commerce. He graduated from Dartmouth College with a Bachelor of Arts in Mathematics and Economics. Welcome. Our third witness is Mr. Harold Feld, the Senior Vice President of Public Knowledge. Before this, he worked as Senior Vice President of Media Access Project, advocating for the public interest in media, telecommunications, and technology policy for almost 10 years. Prior to joining MAP, Mr. Feld was an associate at Covington & Burling, where he worked on the Freedom Information Act, accountability issues at the Department of Energy. He received his BA from Princeton University and his JD from Boston University Law School. Welcome. Our next witness is Theo Protomitis. Ms. Protomitis is the co-founder and CEO of Spa Destination in Tampa, Florida. Spa Destination sells an environmentally conscious luxury brand of natural beauty products and was nominated by Amazon to receive the 2018 National Retail Federation's Champion of Retail Award. As a business leader, she also consults with companies ranging from startup ventures all the way to Fortune 500 companies. She specializes in the area of sustainability, white space analysis, public purpose partnership, and fast growth businesses. I would now like to yield to our ranking member, Mr. Chabot, to introduce our final 2 witnesses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next witness is Mr. Jake Ward, President of the Connected Commerce Council, or 3C, a membership organization for small businesses powered by digital. 3C works to provide small businesses with access to the market's most effective digital tools available, provides coaching to optimize growth and efficiency, and works to cultivate a policy environment that considers and respects the interests of small businesses. Mr. Ward is the co-founder and former CEO of the Application Developers Alliance and Forward Strategies. We thank you for being here this afternoon. And our final witness will be Graham. Could you pronounce that last name for me? Dufault? Yeah. Okay. It looks like that, so that makes sense. Dufault, Senior Director for Public Policy at ACT, the App Association, representing more than 5,000 app makers and connected device companies in the mobile economy. Mr. Dufault leads public policy initiatives and education in front of the Congress on behalf of 5,000 small and medium-sized member companies. Prior to joining the App Association, Mr. Dufault was counsel to the Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce of the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Energy and Commerce. Well, that's a lot of words. Prior to joining the committee, he was counsel to Congressman Lee Terry, focusing primarily on telecommunications and technology issues. He earned his JD from George Mason University School of Law in 2012 with a concentration in communications law, and we thank you also for being here. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Ms. Cabarrera, now you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Chabot, and the members of the committee. I am Allison Cavaretta, a multi-generation small business owner at the Meadowmere Resort in Ogunquit, Maine. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am here to explain why Google's most recent actions in travel present a concern to small business, how those behaviors harm the consumer, and to urge relief from Google's near monopoly access to market. While Google's testimony from July 2019 states that they are proud to work with small businesses, that claim is not uniform. While Google's testimony from examples of an unequal playing field for hoteliers range from a 2015 pay-to-play book here button to currently prohibiting access to the Posts and View Room products. Most recently, March 2019's algorithm change prioritizes paid products, reportedly wiped $13 billion in market value off the largest players in travel, and is harming direct bookings with small hotels like mine. The results often mislead the consumer to the highest bidder and not to our website. Google is an unavoidable gatekeeper. Over 93% of searches begin on Google. Since June, a majority of these searches result in 0 clicks because Google sends these clicks to their own products, YouTube, Maps, subdomains of Google.com, and over a dozen others. Our July correspondence to Congress on the March update is dated just one day after Google claimed to not engage in such practices at a House Judiciary Committee hearing. I will focus on the Google My Business listing product, commonly referred to as the GMB, and as I will refer to it as such hereafter, an increasing middleman. Since the March update took effect, when comparing May through September this year against last year, the following concerns are observed for our hotel. A 36% increase in visits to that GMB product from Google's own Search or Maps products, but only a 5% increase in visits to our website from the GMB. A 22% increase in phone calls to our GMB, but a concerning 33% decrease in direct phone reservations. The click-through rate of 3.8% for our listing is an outstanding search result, since across all industries an average click-through rate for search ads is only 1.91%. And I cannot help but wonder if Google is able to push the GMB performance to outstanding levels by funneling searches to its own product, complete with pay-to-play bookings. The transparency into such behavior is a challenge. Our hotel deploys urchin tracking module parameters, commonly called UTM codes, and that evaluates online marketing. A snapshot of UTM tracking for our listing demonstrates a shift of over 37% in website traffic in just 7 days. When Google arbitrarily removes this tracking, a small business has limited data. This is in stark contrast to the extensive metrics that Google Analytics offers, and I cannot help but wonder why Google does not subject the GMB product to the same metrics that other ads and travel sources are scrutinized by. This is concerning. We estimate a year-over-year shift of over $140,000 in revenue now dependent on this listing in just 6 months. The speed at which Google is impacting the market access for a small business and for the consumer is quite alarming. From 2016 to 2019, the cost to protect direct bookings to our hotel has meant an increased spend of over 500% with Google and a 20% increase in our overall marketing budget to keep up. And we are not an isolated incident. As my testimony notes, over 900 innkeepers representing 47 states and the District of Columbia support the points I am making today. There are strong incentives to pay to play. Travel is a lucrative ecosystem where consumers rely on digital information. Digital travel sales worldwide increased over 10% into $694 billion in 2018. However, the consumer cannot discern that paid products like Google's Book a Room button do not lead to the hotel directly. Over 70% of consumers believe that they are booking directly when in fact they are redirected by the bid system that is frequently won by online travel agents. There are similar concerns with consumers accessing our phone number. Nowhere does Google educate the public that Google is diverting the consumer away from a small business. And while I do not fault them for making decisions on their bottom line, the net impact to small business and consumers is concerning. They loom over innkeepers. The community of small hoteliers now has very high costs to market. And a century ago, we saw such similar things for perishable goods because of the railroads. We are now at the end of the line for today's modern equivalent, the internet. I would ask that the committee look to hardwire a fair playing field in for hotels and for all small businesses. And I thank you for listening and for the opportunity to present today. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Hart.
My name is Molson Hart. Almost 10 years ago, I founded a toy company named Via Hart. We have four full-time employees, and we sold about $4 million of product on Amazon last year and should sell about $5 million on Amazon this year. I speak Chinese, I know manufacturing, logistics, and e-commerce. And with regards to big tech, Amazon is my area of expertise. With my testimony, I'm going to give you a bird's-eye view of what it's like to operate a small business in Amazon's orbit, as well as answer the questions posed by the hearing summary. I will also submit detailed documents for the record that describe issues small businesses and consumers face on Amazon, what government can do about it, and whether they should. To the question, has Amazon created business solutions that have enabled small businesses to reach and serve new customers? The answer to that question is yes, absolutely. The Fulfillment by Amazon program solved logistical issues for small businesses that previously would have required big investments or big headaches. This has enabled small businesses to offer less expensive and innovative products more easily to American consumers. Everyone, perhaps with the exception of brick-and-mortar retailers, has won: Amazon, small businesses, and consumers. As a result, Amazon owns e-commerce. We can talk statistics, but just trust me. For most categories, such as books, toys, electronics, home goods, and gifts, basically everything but cars, food, gasoline, luxury, and convenience, Amazon is dominant. In 2018, despite selling on eBay, Walmart.com, our own website, and brick-and-mortar stores, Amazon accounted for 98% of our revenue. So, do small businesses like ours rely on Amazon? Yes, completely. When they say jump, we say how high. If Amazon suspends us from the platform, we go bust, and we go bust fast. In 2018, we paid $2 million to Amazon, and Amazon's expenses as a share of our revenue on Amazon have gone from 33% in 2013 to 50% in 2018. That said, we've been profitable and our sales have grown 37% every year over that period. So, do small businesses have an opportunity to compete in the information age? It's not easy and we work hard, but we, as a small business, have done all right. So yes, we do have an opportunity to compete amongst big tech. But is the playing field fair? The answer to that is like a Facebook relationship status. It's complicated. I'll laugh at my own joke. All right. If we compete against Amazon, we operate at a massive disadvantage. But provided they don't engage in underhanded tactics, that's okay. It's capitalist competition. If Amazon Basics knocks off one of our products, provided they didn't commit IP infringement, it's unfortunate, but it's okay. On balance, while they certainly make their fair share of mistakes, which I describe in my additional submission for the record, and while they sometimes focus on what's legal rather than what's ethical, they are a good company. They're also an engine for innovation. As such, we as a nation should take great care in legislating or regulating this giant, but also fast-moving and innovative company. Like in the Hippocratic Oath, we should first do no harm. In keeping the metaphor, it is said that sunshine is the best disinfectant. By shining light on the issues, we can compel Amazon to do a better job in addressing them. Since selling on the platform, I've seen them make great strides towards improving their marketplace for honest sellers and consumers. While I do think there are some areas where legislation and regulation is appropriate, in general, here, the threat of it is stronger than its execution. We can do better for American consumers, American small businesses, and the entire United States by proceeding with caution and introducing narrow legislation that addresses the nagging problems on the platform. My additional submission for the record not only describes these problems in detail, but also suggests legislative solutions that can win bipartisan support and better America for all stakeholders. So let's do it. Let's do it now. We have a unique opportunity and time to improve our country by doing so, and I look forward to working with you to make it happen. Thank you for this opportunity, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Phil, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Velazquez, Ranking Member Chabot. Thank you for having me here today. In a world where people find restaurants by asking their phones to show them the best reviewed places on their map apps, where people research their purchases and comparison shop online, and where a viral video or tweet can make you famous in a good way or a bad way, we must acknowledge the impact of big tech goes well beyond startup garages in Silicon Valley. Big tech impacts every main street in America. Digital platforms are only the latest technology to transform how we do business. Just as it is impossible to imagine our economy without the ability to ship goods anywhere, or to operate without electric power, or to manage without credit cards, money transfers, and global communication systems, it is impossible now to imagine a small business without somehow interacting with big tech. As with these previous technologies, Congress must set rules of the road that protect small businesses from anti-competitive abuse and provide the stability necessary for investment and for commerce to thrive. We have seen in the last few years a growing stream of credible allegations that the largest online platforms have used their dominant position to favor their own products, unfairly undermine competitors, or extract concessions from small businesses with no real alternatives. For example, Amazon has been accused of altering its recommendation algorithm to suggest purchases based on what maximizes profit to Amazon rather than what consumers would most like to purchase. Google was found guilty in the EU of favoring its affiliated products in its shopping app. Facebook has been accused of denying access to potential competitors such as Vine and extracting concessions from applications developers once they were locked into the platforms. The companies deny some of these accusations, but the list continues to grow. But even more troubling are the growing number of cases where giant digital platforms hurt small businesses entirely by accident, or when trying to do the right thing. If this were simply about finding and punishing a few bad apples, we could leave this to existing law. But what can a small business do when a fake complaint by a rival can get them kicked off Amazon with no notice, effectively shutting down their business? Or when a decision by YouTube to change its monetization policy can bankrupt thousands of small creators at once? Congress must step up as it has done in the past, as it did when access to railroads or to reliable banking services or to electric power became essential inputs for small businesses. Congress must set some basic rules of the road that ensure that everyone gets treated fairly. Ideally, Congress would create a comprehensive statute addressing digital platforms and a new expert agency to enforce it. Digital platforms are a unique sector of the economy, subject to powerful network effects that make them prone to concentration. At the same time, many of the things that create the capacity for competitive harms also create the capacity for significant consumer and business benefits. A sector-specific regulator is best equipped to investigate concerns and strike the proper balance. Public knowledge recognizes that this is an ongoing process. We therefore urge Congress to focus in the short term on the following four things as most important to protecting small businesses and promoting competition. 1, non-discrimination. Search and recommendation algorithms should treat everyone fairly, not based on how much profit goes to the platform or app store. 2, interoperability. Small businesses and potential competitors with the platform should have the ability to plug and play without interference from the platform. 3, protection of proprietary information. Small businesses expose sensitive information as part of their dealings with digital platforms. Platforms should not be able to exploit that access. 4, due process. Businesses need sufficient notice to plan and the right to correct mistakes that can cost them their business. Thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Phil. Ms. Proto-Mitis, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Velasquez, Ranking Member Chabot, and all the esteemed committee members. My name is Theo Prodromitis, and I am a family member of Greek immigrants, U.S. veterans, very proud veterans, and entrepreneurs. You could say entrepreneurship is in my DNA. And I grew up working in our family businesses. So all of this talk in the committee about small businesses, I'm one of them. I have also had the great pleasure on being the National Retail Federation Small Business Advisory Council, and in that capacity have gotten to work with thousands of different small businesses, understanding their pain points. But for the topic today, we'll talk about the product line that I launched called Spa Destinations. In 2003, we launched our line of personal care products, but in 2008, something happened and we had to downsize and pivot. One of our big issues at that point, in addition to the economy, was the impact of the market flooded with subpar Chinese imports. And our $20 premium natural sponge that was hand-selected and harvested from the Gulf of Mexico as a natural renewable resource now suddenly could not compete with a $2 synthetic sponge imported from China. And that was the impact it had on us because we needed somewhere to tell our story. So in 2014, we heard about selling on Amazon. And all of our colleagues thought we were crazy. They thought Amazon was the competition or the enemy, and they told us not to do it. Luckily, we didn't listen. So we started small, and it was $39.99 to get a seller account, and we started listing some of our products on Amazon, and eureka, our business started to grow over and over again because we featured in on the Amazon Democratizing Opportunity, which is the best brand wins. It's not just price, it was that the fact that we could actually tell our brand story on a platform, and they gave us access to their millions and millions of customers. So Amazon provides conferences and seller university, everything we need. It's a really robust platform that gives us access, and there's people there 24/7 to answer our questions. Yes, we have the same business challenges everybody does, but now we have a logistics expert that allows us to actually focus on product innovation and investing in our own businesses, growing our own staff, and doing the things that we need to do in our small business on this platform. They make a lot of the services very affordable and give small businesses and premium brands like myself a voice. Noteworthy is that Amazon, of course, does disrupt industries and categories, and we all know that. So, for example, when they disrupted the delivery with Prime, it got everybody to innovate, and everybody sort of stepped it up, and they started delivering faster because Amazon focuses and holds us accountable to a customer-centric model where we have to put the customers first. And Dr. Kennedy's testimony said that in the most competitive environment, in my 30 years experience in retail, the most important thing is that the customer is treated fairly. And they also created a professional beauty category to actually decrease the number of counterfeits and to address some of the issues with the market being flooded with used products or substandard products. So in conclusion, there's a few important statistics I just wanted to reiterate. One is that as part of the National Retail Federation, one of their published statistics is that 10% of retail sales, only 10%, are done online. So there's still a huge additional market. It seems like it eclipses everything else, but it only accounts online sales for 10% of all retail. And of course, the one that matters to me the most is that the Amazon platform and building our business after the downsizing in 2008 has given me the opportunity to grow a multi-million-dollar business, take care of my kids, and to grow and innovate and focus on what my expertise is in partnership with Amazon. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ward.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member Shabbat, members of the committee, on behalf of the Connected Commerce Council and our members, it's good to be with you again today. The Connected Commerce Council is a nonprofit membership organization for digitally empowered small businesses. We believe that access to digital tools gives small businesses the best opportunity to succeed. This belief is informed and affirmed by each of our more than 2,500 member companies and supported by the numbers. In fact, a recent Deloitte study illustrates what our members would tell you, that small businesses that leverage digital tools have higher revenue, twice the profitability, and create 3 times as many jobs. It's a privilege to be with you today and to share their perspective and the stories of some of these businesses. Stories like that of a Utah-based startup that invented an all-in-one bedding set that makes it easy for kids and adults to make their bed every morning. And for those of us that have attempted to make a bunk bed, this is an innovation on the level of the wheel and sliced bread. Even then, breaking into traditional retail market and competing against global giants is nearly impossible. With a quality product, a simple website, well-placed ads, and access to online marketplaces, Betty's is now a thriving company employing dozens of people and serving a global customer base. While Betty's is an exceptional company, their success is not an exception. Digital services, platforms, marketplaces help tens of millions of small businesses start, grow, and succeed in previously unimaginable ways. These tools provide lower-cost options specifically designed to provide small businesses with more accurate, measurable, and efficient ways to enter into a market. And most importantly, those tools give small businesses a fighting chance, not only because of the scale of the platforms, but also against some of those larger companies. For our part, it's hard to imagine a more competitive marketplace. The largest, most innovative companies in the world compete fiercely to reach tens of millions of American small businesses. As a result, their prices are low, their products are innovative, and the business is good. In turn, small businesses use these tools and marketplaces and platforms to compete with one another, with larger companies, and with businesses in countries around the world. The result is more, better, cheaper products for consumers everywhere and a more vibrant economy here at home. This is what a healthy market looks like. It's working. I'm not here to defend big tech today or to speak to the interests of those companies. They're more than capable of defending themselves. I'm here today to defend small businesses from the unintended consequences of overreacting, to defend an ecosystem and an economy that is working, and to speak up for tens of millions of American businesses whose livelihood, whose peace of mind, and whose bottom lines have been well served by digital tools and the companies that produce them. 3C's concern is that we too often only focus on the largest companies, missing the forest through the trees. The idea that regulators and policymakers are investigating free and low-cost services that power small businesses confuses and frustrates many of our members. Access to digital tools is essential for American small businesses, not in concept or in a legal sense, but in reality. As you know, the answer to many of these challenges is for policymakers to speak with small businesses rather than simply talking about them. I'd like to thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Representative Shabbat, and this committee for your leadership in welcoming small businesses to the table today. Because if asked, small business owners will tell you the challenge of every small business is unique, but their stories are universal, and that those challenges force small businesses to be early adopters and to adapt quickly where others are too large or too complacent to take advantage. They would tell you that access to affordable, secure, and scalable tools unleashes the potential of American small business, and that the value of that access is measured in new employees and in increased financial security. Every small business owner knows that starting a business is an act of faith, that running one is a matter of perseverance, but success requires luck and a lot of help. Today, that help comes in the form of global platforms and service providers. Digitally empowered small businesses stand on the shoulders of large companies to reach otherwise unattainable heights. Platforms invest in scalable, secure, affordable tools. Marketplaces connect buyers with sellers, and the guiding principles of the digital economy, speed and scale, consistently drive shared value and mutual benefit for small businesses. Innovative technologies and approaches are widely available, easily adopted, and quickly improved upon. Now is not the time for political opportunism or gamesmanship. The stakes are too high and the issue too important. The partnership between big tech and small businesses are built on mutual benefit. Discussions about balancing that benefit are warranted and welcome, but we should also consider the harm changes to the current ecosystem could have on an American small business economy that is thriving. On behalf of tens of millions of digitally empowered American small businesses, thank you for welcoming us today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Dufault, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Graham Default, and I represent over 5,000 small businesses that build the software programs that bring your smart devices to life. Thank you for hosting this important hearing and for listening to the voices of small businesses in this debate. The App Association's primary focus here is on the mobile software market, and that includes the relationships between my member companies and big software platforms. You heard on the first panel about some really big numbers, billions of people, trillions of dollars that are impacted in all of this, but I want to focus on the smaller numbers. The father-son team of 2 at Micro Integration Services in Medford, New Jersey, the team of 17 at HashRocket in Ohio, Florida, and Illinois, and the team of 5 in Duluth, Minnesota at Creative Arcade. These are small numbers, but they add up in your districts to a really powerful engine of growth, and we want to preserve that. Chairwoman Velasquez, in your district, there's a teacher who created an app called Chaperone. It helps organize school field trips in real time. She's a problem solver, and the App Store platform helped her create a solution there. Ranking Member Shabbat, the team at Can Spinach in your district created the augmented reality solution for Toyota so that shoppers can virtually experience cars from their smart devices. And so how did big tech help small companies, these small companies that I just mentioned? Let's go back in time. Back in 1998, it could cost up to about $10 million to get a software company off the ground. Now, 21 years later, it costs about $100,000. From an investor's perspective, a $100 million investment fund can go toward a lot more companies now, and it can go toward market disruptors as opposed to sort of the sure bet, the pre-IPO incumbents. So how have platforms made these radical changes possible? I point to 3 things. 1, reduced overhead. 2, a trusted space. And 3, immediate access to billions of consumers around the world. And so in this case, the fact that platforms, software platforms especially, are household names has actually helped lead to the democratization of entrepreneurship here. Of course, for software companies, coming by trust is a pretty expensive proposition. Even now, when you download a software program, it can be glitchy, it can give your computer a virus, and so a trusted source is extremely valuable. Back in the 90s, it used to be necessary for some developers to sign over their rights to publishers just to deal with that trust issue. And so platforms have changed all of this by creating a trusted space where users know that their devices will remain secure. Not only that, they've done it in a way so that consumers and developers can transact directly. Each of you probably has a smartphone in your pockets, and if you're like the average American, you have somewhere between 60 and 90 apps. The vast majority of those are made by small businesses that you've never heard of. So why is it that you trust the software that they've created enough to download it? And the answer is because the platform has created a dependable environment for you to do that. Of course, it's not all sunshine and roses. Platforms need to improve in important ways, and we're very glad that the committee is conducting this inquiry so that we can understand the competitive forces at work. Our developers need a few things from platforms. Number one, they need developer guidelines and any changes made to them explained clearly so that developers know what the changes are going to mean for them. And number two, we need safety and security. Some have control over device security and other platforms don't, but measures should be in place to ensure that consumers and developers alike are protected. And number three, platforms should diligently respond to even the smallest developer when they see that their content has been stolen by another developer on the platform. Right now, platforms are fighting for our business. This is an ideal state of affairs, and it is a sign that competition is alive and well, at least in the app economy here. So from Congress, our asks are simple. Number one, even by the most conservative estimates, 20 million Americans still lack access to broadband. I have a colleague from Orrington, Maine, who's just 6 miles out of Bangor, actually, and her parents still use dial-up. Dial-up is still being used everywhere, all over the place here in the United States. It's still an issue. We thank the committee for the efforts that you guys have embarked on to ensure that broadband is deployed to the hardest to reach parts of America. Number two, we appreciate the committee's efforts to ensure that Small Business Administration programs do what they're supposed to do, and we want to urge you to continue that work to ensure that tech-driven businesses like my members have access to those support mechanisms as well. And then finally, we urge you to provide adequate resources for workforce training programs so that we can fill the 500,000 computing jobs that are open right now in this country. And so thank you again for the opportunity to appear here before the committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimonies. Let me just say and share with you that in this committee, we work in a bipartisan way. There's no Republican or Democratic approach when it comes to issues that are impacting small businesses. So we are committed to accountability. And so when we have Amazon and Google come before us and we pose questions regarding the treatment or the unlevel playing field for small businesses to be able to compete and not put at a disadvantage, and they tell me that they know because they do internal testing, well, it's not only about internal testing, it's about accountability. And I believe that was Congressman Hearn who raised the issue, who is watching over you, who is holding you accountable. And so that is what goes to the heart of the issue here. So, Ms. Cabarera, it is my understanding that over 96% of all hotel room bookings that take place through online travel agencies go through two companies, Expedia and Bookings.com. They then pay millions of dollars to Google, which controls 90% of all internet searches. It seems to me that if you are a travel company looking to reach consumers, all roads lead to Google. Can you expand on how this happened and discuss how it impacts small businesses and ultimately consumers?
Certainly, Chairwoman, I'd be happy to address that today. And first off, thank you very much for the hearing and the opportunity. Two things come to mind with your question. First, when over 70% of consumers believe that they are booking directly with a hotel when in fact they are redirected by Google's Book a Room button to the highest bidder, the traveling public is being misled. It's misdirection to that highest bidder, and often it's to the highest bidders of those two companies you mentioned. Or it's one of their mass subsidiaries. I think Google can get to over 18,000 of Expedia's sites, and they have that many. Or, even worse, it can be a fraudulent fly-by-night site and you have an online booking scam. Second, our small business has to pay now to try to have our phone number found in searches, and those searches spiked over the last 6 months since this recent update. And it's still not being found, as the data shows. So that secretive algorithm, the transparency that you're so concerned about, it determines whether or not we have our call extension shown, even if we're paying for it or not. So if the consumer is directly searching for our phone number, the net effect is that Google has moved the ability for it to be found by the consumer into a pay-to-play space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, you rightly recognize that Amazon has created business solutions that have enabled small businesses to reach new customers, solving logistical and transportation issues for millions of small firms. But you also acknowledge Amazon could do better. What are your targeted ideas to ensure that companies like Amazon and other large tech companies like them are not using their market power to put at a disadvantage small businesses?
So at this point, I think the best course of action would be narrow legislation coming from Congress to address some of the nagging problems on Amazon. And I laid some of them out in my additional submitted testimony. For example, there's a law called the DMCA, where if someone files an allegation of copyright infringement, the defendant, as it were, has the right to submit a DMCA counter notice for that copyright infringement and kind of say to the person who's saying that you're infringing on the copyright, say, look, if I'm infringing on your copyright, you've got to sue me. I think that legislation should be extended towards trademarks and patents, and I think that would clean up the marketplace enormously. The reason why is that there are a lot of brands in the United States that make allegations of trademark infringement towards companies that are selling on Amazon, that are selling authentic goods. They want to keep their prices high. They don't want the competition on Amazon, so they say that guy, who's maybe in Ohio, maybe in rural Ohio, who's selling products, that person is selling inauthentic goods, when in reality they're not. Amazon, in some cases, they may make the wrong decision, they may make the right decision, will suspend that seller from the platform. I think that's a pretty good example of how we could fix that problem. That problem has existed for 3 to 5 years, maybe even longer on the Amazon platform, and they haven't really done anything about it. So I think at this point, we could use some legislation. And in my additional submission, there are a whole host of other ideas like this that improve the platform.
Thank you. Mr. Phil, how should Congress approach ensuring small businesses are treated fairly on these large platforms?
I have a number of specific suggestions. I think it's exactly that. There needs to be somebody who can check. There needs to be somebody who has the authority to go in and ask questions. At the same time, the company's proprietary information needs to be respected. You don't want to expose the search algorithm itself because you don't want people to be able to hack it for illegitimate purposes. There are other suggestions in my written testimony, and I'm happy to supplement because I see I'm running out of time.
Thank you. So you listen to the companies that were here today. Do any of you have any reaction to any point that was raised or any of the answers that were provided by either Amazon or Google? Mr. Phil.
I do want to address this point that Amazon makes about comparison of their own label with traditional supermarket labels, because it's not really a fair analogy. The problem here is that Amazon acts much more as a distributor than as a retail market. If I go to a supermarket, yes, there's the generic brand label on the shelf, but I also see all of the other products. If I'm in the pet food section, for example, I see all of the other cat foods. And if I'm on Amazon, however, I only see the products that are displayed in the very small space which there is for a display. Furthermore, the supermarket only knows the sales that it makes. It orders an inventory, it brings that in, it knows the specific sales it makes, it may have information about the customers that it sells to, whereas Amazon takes in a great deal more of proprietary information in the same way that a distributor, a national or global distributor does. Again, it's not quite like a distributor either, but I recommend in the testimony, and I've recommended in my book, the Case for the Digital Platform Act, which is available on Amazon, which, as I point out, is not hypocrisy, it just proves my point. There are many situations that we have like this, such as shippers and telephone companies, where we have rules that govern this.
Okay, my time my time expired. I'm sorry. If not, Mr. Shabbat is going to be. Then he's going to say that I am too partisan here, and I'm not.
I would never say such a thing. Just to be clear, though, we did agree to, that was about 7 minutes, so yes, we get it. Okay.
That's what I got.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Ward and Mr. Feld. Obviously, one of the things that Congress is considering is, should we get involved relative to regulations of the tech platforms and that sort of thing. And if we were on a scale, say, of 0 to 10, 0 being leave it as it is, don't do anything, to 10 being a heck of a lot of regulations, as much as is necessary. Mr. Ward, Mr. Feld, I don't care who goes first, but make your best argument as to where that number ought to be, and why. So 10 is a lot of regulations, 0 is no more than we have now.
Well, I think you have to have as much as necessary. I mean, that's kind of like how high is up. I think that the current situation is an atmosphere that creates distrust by small businesses, that creates situations where they can't resolve their problems, where very real problems are being created, where businesses are being hurt by accident, where the platforms are trying to do the right thing and can't because they involve complicated trade-offs. So I think Congress needs to make a number of important decisions. I don't think that necessarily equals lots and lots of regulation, but I do think that it means that Congress needs to create an authority that's empowered to, an umpire to call balls and strikes. That's not a lot of work. It's calling balls and strikes, but it's pretty important to do.
Okay. Can you put a number on it?
No.
Okay. All right, Mr. Ward?
2.
Okay.
I think in the life cycle of platforms and big tech companies, we're in the Model T stage. This is just the beginning. We're seeing the market do what the market is supposed to do. We, frankly, are so far afield from what real capitalism is supposed to look like, it scares us a little bit. I, on behalf of my members, reject out of hand the idea that small businesses distrust the platforms. I think that the vast majority of growth in the small business community is because they do trust the platforms. There is certainly a backlash against large tech companies over the last 3 or 4 years for reasons outside the perspective of competition. And there is sort of a triangulation around the idea of data and privacy and competition that is all coming together at once. And that's understandable and reasonable, and we should all dig into that. But I think historically we know that one of the primary drivers of innovation in this country is not government intervention, right? What Google and Amazon need to figure out better ways to service small businesses is not government bureaucracy. I also think the FTC would be a little insulted that we need somebody else to call balls and strikes. And lastly, regulatory capture is a very real threat if we go down this road. There is a continuing evolution in big tech, faster cycles than we've ever seen. That's just the nature of the universe that we live in now. Let's give the market a chance to catch up and surpass and reorder some of these companies before we have Congress do it.
Thank you. Mr. Default, let me go to you next. I think you said you have about 5,000 apps in your organization. Or how many apps are there? I know that's a hard number to know, but do you have any idea how many there are out there?
The major platforms, you have more than 2 million that are broadly available to the public. So there's going to be more than that. Those are, I think that's the latest count for the Apple App Store and then the Google Play Store. So there are more than that. There are more than just those two platforms is the thing that we have to recognize. And many of our member companies are on Microsoft's platform. They're on App 47, which is an enterprise platform that most people don't think about because it's really just enterprise-facing work. And so I'll point to that and say, definitely over 2 million, but it's hard to count at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If an ad or something pops up on your iPad or your iPhone or whatever, is there an accepted size that the X is supposed to be on there, and kind of is there best practices or is there anything like that?
You're talking
really
about
hard to
the
find
ads?
sometimes.
The ads or the
yeah, say an ad pops up and you want to get rid of the ad, and
right.
There's an X where you can X out and get rid of that ad and look what you went on there to begin with. Is there an accepted size or is there a standard or?
There are some standards. I know that the Digital Advertising Alliance, which is sort of a partnership of advertisers, tries to standardize the size and make sure that there's an opt-in for advertisers so that you can provide that X. I think I know what you're talking about. It's a little blue X in the top right corner, right?
Yeah, usually up there, just to get rid of it if you want to. And
right.
Along those lines, oftentimes you're given two choices on this particular thing that you didn't go to that popped up. It's either like do it, whatever it wants, or do it later. Well, I don't want to do it at all. So they don't give you an option, and there's no X. I don't know that there's any regulations on that, but that's one I might just support to do something about that. Let me go to you, Ms. Cabrera. You, excuse me. I know you had your battles with Google. What, if anything, did they do? Did they offer to do anything? Did they? Did you consult? Did you confront them? And if so, did you get any answer at all? Or?
In short, no. They have not approached me, and they are not approachable.
And you couldn't get them. I mean, basically, they're just okay. Mr. Hart, let me go to you next. You mentioned that I think you said 50%. Is it 50% of sales basically goes to Amazon? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. If we sell $1 on Amazon, as of 2018, we pay 50 cents of that dollar to Amazon. Okay. In 2013, it was 33 cents.
Okay. And what services do you get in return for that? Do they break it down for you, or what?
Yeah, they absolutely do break it down for us. So the first thing is we pay a 15% commission on every product that is sold on Amazon. For some of the products we sell, we pay fulfillment by Amazon fulfillment fees. They range from $5 to $10, depending on how heavy the item is. We pay a ton of money. As I recall, in 2018, we spent about $180,000 on sponsored advertising on Amazon. That kind of works the way Google AdWords advertising does. When you search, you'll see a sponsored product. We pay money in the form of storage fees, whole host of things. When you add them all up, in 2018, it added to about 50%.
Thank you.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield to the chair.
So, Mr. Hart, that means, was I correct or incorrect when I made the comment to Amazon that in order for a small business, a search, to show a small business product, that if you pay ads, then you will show up in the first page or second, but not.
Yeah, in 2019, at this point, it's enormously difficult to have your products appear on Amazon without paying Amazon for advertising. It depends, it varies by category, but if you do like a random search on Amazon, your top 8 results, in many cases, will be advertisements, will be advertised products. You go back to 2013, Amazon didn't even have advertising. So that's one of the ways that Amazon's expense share of our sales has gone from 33% to 50%. And I know you guys have limited time, but if I could, I'd love to respond to some of the questions and things that were said earlier.
My time's expired, but I'll yield back at this point.
Okay, the gentleman is back, and Mr. Pennia is recognized for 5 minutes. And you will have 2 extra minutes if you want to listen or allow for the gentleman to be able to react.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to piggyback a little bit on the ranking member and what he said between the 0 to the 10 and go by the previous person. I think it was Mr. Kennedy, and he raised the issue that it should be about the consumer. And I haven't heard that. That's what I'm most concerned about, is the consumer. So I heard one gentleman say 2, and I heard the other one didn't want to give a number. But how all does this relate to the consumer? I mean, it's about credibility and integrity. So I'm hearing about the search engine, but the consumer, the consumer doesn't have the ability to have access to this information. So Mr. Felton, now I'm interested in the other gentleman, Mr. Ward, I think it is.
This is one of the big issues that makes the digital platform sector unique. It has what I call perfect asymmetry of information, meaning if I'm the user, I have no clue what's going on there.
Right.
I have to trust. Now, one of the ways is if I start getting good search results, that they're relevant, and that's all fine. But the problem is when you're talking about from a business perspective, there are a lot of hotels that are relevant to me if I'm looking for a vacation in Maine. I don't happen to know what's the ideal one, and if somebody's paying, it's kind of like if you're listening on the radio, I don't know if it's a payola thing where somebody's paying for play, or if it's really that the DJ thought that was a cool song. Right. And that's why Congress passed a law that says, no payola, you have to pay if it's being sponsored. So there's a similar problem here. There's just no way for the consumer to know, and I agree with Ms. Cavaretta that, it's a real problem, that it's deceiving the consumer to some degree if it's not factors that the consumer thinks the search ought to be based on.
Mr. Ward, your response?
Yeah, sorry. The idea of consumer harm, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'll play one on TV for a minute, is an FTC term. I think it's Article 5. It's the idea of price discrimination or deception, neither of which are particularly applicable when the product is free. Now, it's true that free is a price, that you have to build into the idea that your search result has a value to somebody, the same way it would if you were shopping for something else. But again, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. And we were taking for granted that this didn't even exist 23 years ago. When we wanted to go vacation in Algonquin, we'd ask somebody that we knew that had been there. And that was the quality of the search that we could do. In this case, it doesn't take too many clicks to look at ratings, Yelp reviews, particular feedback from people that have actually been there. You can make a call or two. All of that is accessible because of the investment that was made from these companies to give that power to us. If we're not willing to use it, that's on us, not them.
But even though are you still holding to your position based on the ranking member of being a 2 when I add the aspect of the consumer? Because remember, the consumer is trusting this information, and the consumer doesn't really know. Because through marketing of this, the consumer makes the assumption that I'm getting the best. I'm going to see what you want to say something too. So I got about a minute, and so you got to make it quick. I want to get over to the small.
I believe Ranking Member Shabbat's question was on a scale of 1 to 10, how urgent is it that government get involved? And my answer was 2.
Right. You said 2, correct.
That's still the case.
Even though that's about the consumer.
Particularly.
You want to comment on that?
Thank you, Congressman Evans. I would say that if you looked at your search results as a consumer, you had about 900 pixels that was going to be relevant to your organic search result, and you're down to about 360, 390. That's organic, and the rest of it, and Google is now all a pay product. That's a lot of real estate that's gone that they're making money off of. But, you know, just this past weekend, I can tell you that I had customers thought they booked on Booking.com, and they did. But really, it came through another third party because they did site scraping. And the customer had no idea that they had 2 middlemen in between their reservation or not. And what happens is they don't know who they've actually booked with. And that's a problem when they want to change their reservation, if it's a fly-by-night site. And that's happening often. I send about 2 cease and desist letters every summer to fly-by-night companies that are scraping off of sites and causing fake bookings. And that's a real problem, and it's enabled by this environment where there's lack of clarity around those reservation buttons.
I'll yield back to balance my time. I only say to you, Madam Chair, it does seem like the Wild West for the consumer. Now, if we're talking about the consumer who doesn't have the knowledge that we are seeing here and don't have a chance to hear, the consumer looks like they're in trouble.
Since I allotted 7 minutes for the gentleman, I will allow Mr. Hart and Ms. Cabrera to react to any of the answers that were provided previously by the companies that were here.
Just briefly, I think there's some narrow areas where Amazon has policies that do lead to consumer harm. This isn't an example of it, but just to kind of frame the conversation. So we were talking about how I was paying 33 cents for every dollar in 2013. Now it's 50 cents for every dollar in 2018. We raised prices, so that's a little bit of consumer harm right there. But that's not an Amazon policy necessarily. Returning to the comments earlier, Ranking Member Shabbat, you said that exports are important to you, and I obviously agree, everyone does. One really great way to solve that problem would be to bring equity to the Chinese e-packet situation, and I can explain what that is if you like. Basically, it's just considerably more expensive for us to ship our products to the United Kingdom versus a seller in China, considerably, like 10 times the cost, and that inhibits our exports. Congressman Golden, you asked a question to Mr. Mehta about whether or not you need to store your goods in fulfillment by Amazon. This isn't necessarily something that's unfair or bad, but in order to get sales, you absolutely do need to store your products in Amazon's warehouses in order to get that prime check. The punishment for late delivery, Amazon makes late deliveries all the time. A lot of us are Prime members. It's probably happened to you. You can fight for like maybe a $5 promotional credit or something like that. We ship out of our own warehouse. If we're late, we can get suspended, which is a rather more onerous punishment. Now, if Amazon is late, in some cases, you can like kind of edge your way into a refund of some sort. This is another example of consumer harm. And Amazon is very generous with how it refunds the consumer in that case. But it turns out in a lot of cases, my company will be footing that bill. So they'll deliver our product late, but we pay for the refund, even though it wasn't our fault. Respectfully, Ms. Prodromitis, I know hundreds of Amazon sellers, and I would say that her view of the platform is more the exception than the rule. And I'd love to hear about how she sells her sponges on Amazon today in view of how much Chinese competition there is on the marketplace now.
Okay. If you have any reaction to any of the question previously made, otherwise I will recognize the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Golden. We are running late here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hart, for weighing in on that. That's basically what I suspected and why they might be able to do it. I hope sometimes say just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think when consumers learn more and more about these things, some of them may make different choices, and it's okay. But even having the ability to have that information and then make those choices, I think, is part of what we're talking about. I would just make a comment that as we have had conversations about government getting involved and whether or not people trust government to get involved and get it right. And absolutely, I think sometimes it's totally fair to say government doesn't get it right. Sometimes they do get it right. And one thing that I always hear from my constituents is a concern in particular about individual information. We can talk about healthcare and other things. People's concerns about the government having control over individualized information. And when I think about some of the tech companies and some of these services, I think that the growing distrust out there in the general public is about this concern about information and who has control over it, whether it's directly, attached to them in their name or not. People are becoming aware that there is a lot of information flying around about them, and there's, I think, a growing distrust and a lot of concern, and people will, I think, over time look to government for reassurances that they have protections, and I think that companies are going to have to come to grips with this and acknowledge that as they have growing power, and as I listen to Ms. Cavaretta talk about some of the issues with her business. I hear her talking about the fact that there is, in addition to the relationship between her and the consumer, a growing kind of side market that consumers are not even aware of in terms of another level of revenue being introduced into the relationship. But even beyond that, there's another almost side market, which is the trafficking of people's data and information, which also a lot of these companies are harvesting and using to go out and make money. And I think that consumers are aware of that and concerned about it as well. So I think there is a responsibility to do oversight. And at the end of the day, thinking about consumers, what we need to be able to talk about is transparency, which is what Ms. Cavaretta and a lot of other people are talking about. These are really amazing, things that you said they help a lot of small businesses. None of these business owners would be using these platforms if that wasn't the case, but they also have a right to express their concerns and seek for options and to have a voice, which is what the point of Congress is at the end of the day. I love this phone right here. A good partner of mine back home, Chamber of Commerce, Maine State Chamber of Commerce. I love to work with them. Love to work with their members. Lewiston Auburn Chamber of Commerce, where I come from, I can go onto their website, do a quick scroll search, see who all of their members are, have a really helpful platform there where I can reach out. I can say, I want to find a local brewery or something along those lines. Get connected with that business. It's a great service and a great nonprofit. So just a little bit of helpful feedback. Mr. Ward, I love to have more information. I love to know who I'm talking to, who's sitting before me. I checked out your website, clicked on your membership page. It just gave me the opportunity to sign up as a member. Perhaps I'll consider that or have my family small business think about that. But I would just say we'd love to know more about the tens of millions of small business owners that you do represent, and I think that is helpful information for members of Congress to know. And just with the remaining time I have, Ms. Cavaretta, I know that you were indicating you had more to say.
Thank you very much, Representative Golden. Earlier we talked about misdirection and a little bit of the confusion that the consumer may have. And there's two sides to that. If you use that Google My Business listing as a hotel, and you can now go down to the View Rooms feature, of which a hotel like mine does not have access to, it drops you right to an OTA. So they're going to have access to that for 6 months, and the consumer will be booking with them for 6 months before I will get that as the producer of the product at my family's business. And that is unusual to me, to think that I can not sell my own product on my own listing that's given to me for free by Google, and the consumer can't tell the difference except for a little tiny word. And so both they are misled and I am withheld from being able to access a way to sell on that product and platform that way.
The gentleman yields back. Well, we want to thank all the witnesses for taking time to be here. I know that you all have a busy schedule. I really appreciate it. We have now heard from both large tech companies and small Main Street businesses about opportunities and challenges for entrepreneurs in the digital economy. As we continue to race toward innovation, we cannot forget the important role small firms play in our communities and our economy. Toy companies, beauty brands, family-owned, small businesses across all sectors rely on the internet and digital platforms to reach consumers and grow their businesses. However, when entrepreneurship continues to lag in the U.S., that means fewer jobs and less innovation. While we must ensure that there are protection for small businesses and consumers who enjoy the benefits of digital platforms, we must work diligently to develop policies that will also continue to foster innovative technology that has the power to continue to change our lives. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to come up with bipartisan solutions to these issues. I will ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statement and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered, and if there is no further business to come before the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.